Welcome to the EarthWorks podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon from many of our turf friends from the past 30 years.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the EarthWorks podcast. I'm Joel Simmons, the owner and president of EarthWorks, and every year at this time, we like to do what we call the best of the EarthWorks podcast. So this is the best of the EarthWorks podcast for the year 2022. And we had a great year. We have been doing this now since the beginning of COVID. We're well over 100 podcasts, and we will continue to carry podcasts to you every week when we can. And we will bring in some of the very best guests, as I think we've proven over the last year. And that's what we want to talk about this year. So we've done an awful lot of interviews, and we've had some phenomenal ones. Our entire team is now doing EarthWorks podcast, so we're getting a whole lot of stuff down. And I do want to thank all of our guests that have come on and all of our guests that will come on. And if you have any ideas as to who should be on the EarthWorks podcast, please reach out to one of us and we'd be happy to talk about that. I had the great pleasure of interviewing a lot of people this year, which was a lot of fun. One of the more recent ones I had a chance to interview was John Ballard from Valhalla, which I think is one of the best golf courses. And I'll share a little clip of that as well. I also want to share a clip of the interview I did with one of my dear friends, Eric Richardson of the Essex Country Club, and I love his property. Actually, I love both of those properties, but Eric and I have gone back years, and I've been on that property for so long, and the story of Eric's property is quite amazing. It's where Donald Ross was actually a superintendent, and Eric talks about that. And again, I'll share a little clip of that interview as well. Had a chance to meet and talk in a two-part series with my friend Pete McCormick. And we talked about some pretty serious stuff, mental health. And I think it's something that everybody in the industry will get something out of, because we all deal with the pressures of what this industry can do on a regular basis. I had the great pleasure of interviewing some women in turf, Laura Beth Catterson and Madison Rudzinski. Sorry, Madison, I always have a problem with your name. But what a great story. We started that with Troy Flanagan from the Olympic Club when the U.S. Women's Open was there, and Troy brought in a whole bunch of women, and that's a story that I hope will continue for years to come. Had a great opportunity to interview a couple guys from the pro football circuit, Tony Leonard from the Eagles, and my former student Travis Hogan from the Kansas City Chiefs. Also had a great opportunity to interview Bob Rainham, the mayor of Long Island, who was at Atlantic Country Club for so long, and it was a highly listened to podcast. But the two biggest listens for the last couple of years have been Armin Sooney and the many various episodes that we've had with Dave Wilbur. So right now I'm going to play a couple of those, the John Ballard clip and a clip from Eric Richardson. I hope you enjoy, and I'll be back after that to talk about some more interviews that we've had. Hi, everybody. I'm Joel Simmons, and this is the EarthWorks podcast. I am honored and very excited to have John Ballard, the golf course superintendent from Valhalla Golf Club, with us. Truly one of the best golf courses I've ever been on in my life, John, and I'm grateful that I've had the opportunity to come and visit you a couple times this past year. But that property that you are managing is really quite special, isn't it? I mean, you've been there, what now, 3 years?
That's correct. And first, thanks for having me. I enjoyed being here today and talking with you guys. But yeah, so I've been here for 3 years, and you're correct. It is a special piece of property that has a rich history in a very short period of time.
I did some homework on this. The one thing I found, and your website is rich full of information on that club, but one of the things I found that was most interesting is where the name Valhalla came from. Do you know that you must have read this 100 times or been asked that? But if you don't mind, I'll read it from your website. Valhalla is the great hall described in Norse mythology where the souls of Vikings feasted and celebrated with the gods. and that's where you are. So yeah. That's quite a starting point, isn't it, to have a facility like that where the gods are feasting with the Vikings and having to follow up with that thing. It's an amazing property. I mean, it's a Nicholas design. And I when I was doing my homework, I didn't realize that it was as young as it opened in '86. I for some reason thought it was a much older course, but it really isn't.
Yeah, it did. And I think that's sort of what speaks to sort of that rich history and kind of a quick amount of time with having three PGA championships, a Ryder Cup, two senior PGA championships, and getting ready to host our fourth in 2024.
Yeah, that's quite the resume. I mean, that's pretty impressive. So just to go through that, 96, 2000 and 2014 PGA, the 2008 Ryder Cup, 204 and 211 senior, and you're going to be hosting the PGA in 24. You've got your plate full. You just finished a complete, renovation, but let's talk about that. You just completely kind of regressed, or give me some more information as to the depth of what you guys did. It was pretty impressive.
Yeah, so when I came on board in 2019, Roger Meyer, the previous superintendent, Mark Wilson, done a fantastic job with the property. And I think that's the reason a lot of these tournaments came about and came here. And Valhalla had seen a lot of changes since its inception in '86 up until 2019. They had redone greens, bunkers, irrigation, all that type of thing. But the two areas that really have never been touched were tees and fairways. And so we had an older variety of bent, a Pencross bent that was relatively contaminated with both Poa-Triv as well as annual bluegrass. And so in this tough transition zone area, we simply weren't performing the way that we wanted to perform late in the season. So as we got to August, volume of play, cart traffic, the onset of the summer, we had just started to introduce annual bluegrass level into the area. So we were seeing some damage from that. And so at the end of the day, we simply weren't providing the championship conditions that we wanted to do. And so we took a big step back and we said, okay, we need to do something. We need to address this bent grass, tees, and fairways. And so we basically just laid out and said, okay, if we go back with bent grass, these are the pros and cons. And then Roger had the foresight to go ahead and start putting some zoysia on the property. So we had Xeon zoysia on the property for about 3 years in different areas, practice facility areas and the like. And we could see how it was performing. And as we sort of wrote these things out on a piece of paper, zoysia just continued to check more and more boxes than what bentgrass did. And it's a wonderful story because of the sustainability factor to it. It's less inputs across the board, Joel. It's less water, less chemistry, less manpower. It was going to perform better during those tough summer months, which is really the in-season play. And so the decision was made to move forward and regrass the golf course in Xeon zoysia.
Who made that decision?
Ultimately, it was our recommendation to the powers of the PGA who owned the property at the time.
Yeah.
It was our recommendation, said, here's what we think we need to do. Listed some of the things that I just mentioned, talked about sort of the return on investment, the cost, all those types of things. We laid that out, and those guys agreed. They said, yes, let's go ahead and do it. With the one main question that they continue to come up with over and over again when we talk about these championships is, what will zoysia grass look like in May in Louisville, Kentucky? Will it be green? That was kind of the major thing.
Yeah.
They sort of got the water, the fertilizer, the cost, but will it be green?
What's going to look like on TV is what they're asking you, right?
100%. Yep. 100%.
How do you answer that? I mean, do you really know? I mean, there's other zoysias in the area.
Yeah, I think we've got a pretty good idea. I was the superintendent at a club in town here, Audubon Country Club, for 16 years. And we had Myers zoysia grass. So I had a pretty good handle on how we warm up, how we trend and things like that. And in addition, I mentioned that we had the Xeon on property for 3 years. We could sort of see that, and we had documentation of here's how it greens up and comes online in the spring. So we feel pretty comfortable, confident we'll be in a good spot.
For those who don't know the climate in as they say, Louisville, Kentucky, tell us the weather. Give us an idea as to what you're battling with from weather. I mean, what's it like season to season?
I think like anybody in the transition zone, we just have a lot of extremes, and that's both warm and cold in the winter, and we can change quickly. In fact, yesterday here it was 42 and gray, and today it's 68 degrees, and the sun's out. So we can swing pretty quick, it seems like, in this area. I think the thing with Louisville in particular is we're a river town. So elevation's about 580 feet above elevation, this far inland. So we really kind of sit down in the Ohio Valley.
Yeah.
And then in addition to that, Valhalla sits even lower. We're in a floodplain. Half the golf course is in a floodplain. So air movement's always a challenge for us and something that we're always focused on. But Not much different than other transition places. St. Louis, Missouri would be really comparable.
This next clip that I recorded was an interview with Eric Richardson of the Essex County Club up in New England. Phenomenal golf course. This is the home of Donald Ross. Just a great interview, a great story. Well worth listening to.
In the greens.
I've said this to you, and I say it to a lot of people, but I honestly believe you're the busiest guy in the golf course superintendent world. I mean, you are never stopping. I mean, I've known you for a number of years. I've been on your property a couple times pre-COVID, unfortunately, and again, would love to get back out there. But man, you know, I think the first time I got out there, you were just, what you guys have done to this property is exceptional. As I was saying to you a little bit ago, you're one of the properties with all the work that you've done, and I'd like to get into this, all the work that you've done, you're one of the properties that if you took me in there and dropped me in the middle of it blindfolded and I didn't see the clubhouse, I probably wouldn't recognize the club. And I know your club as well as almost any club I know that I've worked on over the last 35 years. So let's talk about what it is all you guys did. I mean, you took down 1 million trees. You moved, I don't know if you moved a lot of dirt, but you certainly took down a lot of trees.
Yeah, the members even tell me that every year I give them a new golf course. So,
really?
You know what?
So
every year, you're not alone, Joel. So every year we kind of reconstruct things and we give them a new adventure on the property or a restored adventure on the property. And all the work. What's interesting about Essex, and this goes back to Donald Ross and every superintendent before me, all the work's done in house. So we have architectural consultants, and other than the irrigation install and a portion of this drainage install, all the tree work, all the bunker work, all the restoration, T regrading, new mow lines, everything's done in house. We have 2 excavators, multiple skid steers, laser graders, and you're right. I'm a busy guy because I don't like to sit still, whether it's July or November or December. People don't believe me, but usually January is one of my busier months because that's when we're doing most of the tree work. Over the years, we've taken business. Yeah, over the years, we've taken, roughly about 20 acres worth of forest, 3rd, 4th generation forest. Dense forest removed and opened up these hillsides and these vistas and connected the kind of the corridors of golf on the golf course. For years and years and years, people played Essex and thought it was 2 separate nines because the front 9 was, felt isolated from the back 9. And so we've been kind of clearing out the trees in the middle to kind of connect those 2 9s and also kind of bring some of the wind back into play. We removed a ton of trees on the 17th hole, which used to be one of the easiest golf holes, and just by removal of the trees, not adding any significant length, now it's one of the harder holes on the golf course. So all the work is in house. So I've personally cut down trees, and then we're out there with excavators, scraping the forest mat off the floor, popping stumps. Stump grinding and reestablishing turf, native turf when we're done. So it's been a project that really started in 2007. This is my 16th season at the club already. Goes by quick. Everybody tells you that, but it really does.
No, was there a master plan? Is this all Eric's idea? How did this all get going? Or did you just get out there with a chainsaw and they couldn't stop you anymore? Get away.
You're going to get me in trouble if you call it Eric's idea. But no, we have Bruce Hepner as our architectural consultant. Bruce has been with the club for 20 years. He's unbelievable. Okay. Fantastic in a room. And, are some of the ideas mine? Yes, but we will make sure we clear them with Bruce we've made some bold decisions and they've paid off because the ground is so interesting, because there's so much character in the property that was hidden by the forest. We have these rock formations that are poking outside of the hills, and we have these natural grasses, and the golf course has been able to breathe more now that we remove these trees. So we've been able to kind of bring back some more linksy type golf, which is what the membership at Essex enjoys the most. They don't really want the golf course lush green. They actually want it a little brown. Yeah. So, the tree removals had, numerous positive effects on the property, not just from the visuals, but also from an agronomic standpoint.
I remember the first time I came out and met you, I vividly remember your enthusiasm of exposing some of the rock outcroppings you had. And they're stunning. I don't know the holes, unfortunately, but there's a couple, around some turns that, man, the rocks, you said to me you could never see those before you started. Did you even know they were there when you got there? You couldn't see them at all.
My favorite, I love walking a golf course, but I also like walking through the forest that's kind of in the middle of the golf course. So I'm always poking around and always kind of keeping an eye on what's really there, what's beneath the obvious.
Yeah.
and kind of just come one explain. It kind of started off with just one little tree project we did behind our 11th green. This was just covered in pine trees. And this is my first fall. And I had a great chair, Val Summers, who just let me go for the most part. And we exposed this hillside, and there was some rock, and we left the rock with the members, weren't sure at first. A lot of the comments I get post removal, because it always looks ugly the first year, no matter what anybody will tell you, no matter what. Now, we do a lot of camouflage and we do a lot of things to make sure we blend it away, but it looks ugly the first year. So always the first comment I get is, you guys are just watering the rocks.
Watering the rocks.
Yeah, watering the rocks. We apply water, for year one to get the seed to
well, if you water them, they grow a little bit bigger, and they'll make them make stronger and healthier rocks. I mean, it's
yeah, exactly.
Let me go back a little bit. Give me some of your history. I don't know a whole lot about your background prior to Essex, but give me some of your background. How did you get into this silly business, first of all, and go from there?
Yeah, so I mean, my love of golf started when I was young. My grandfather had this little piece of carpet he'd pull out of his garage when we go see him, and he'd put those little wiffle balls and give me a wedge, and that's how I learned how to play golf, was on a piece of carpet.
That's how Tiger started, so why not?
Yeah, in his backyard. So that's when I started my love of golf, and then I played golf in high school. But I actually went to school for criminal justice.
I didn't know
aunt,
that.
Yeah, my aunt Lori was the SAC in Long Beach for Homeland Security. My brother Jeff is a federal agent. Public service is a big part of my.
Oh,
my
I'm going to be a lot nicer to you now that I know those things. I didn't know that.
Well, I doubt that, but
no, you're right, probably not.
I don't deserve it. So
where'd you go to school?
I was going to Western Michigan University, so I was going for criminal justice, and that summer I started working on a golf course, and I was 19 years old, so I just finished my freshman year at Western Michigan, and I'm like, I love this.
Are you
I love
from
being outside.
Western Michigan? Are you from Michigan?
So I'm from Los Angeles originally, in northern burbs of Los Angeles. And then we moved when I was a teenager to Michigan. My dad worked for General Motors. Lived in, and then my family's kind of bounced around in the entire country. So kind of a long story that we will need more than an hour to cover all that.
Sorry,
that
where was this first job? What was the first?
It was Heather Hills Golf Course in Bruce Township, Michigan. So it's about 50 miles north of Detroit.
Okay.
I went to high school at a school, small little school just around the corner from there. Just a mom and pop operation. We had a 4-man team, which means I got to learn everything quickly. I was making irrigation repairs in my second month. We were spraying and fertilizing, and so I got a lot of exposure to what the business is, not just sitting on a mower. And it just, I just loved it. My biggest fear, at that time was living life in a cubicle. I didn't want to be under fluorescent light.
Right.
I wanted to be outside. I'd like to work hard. And you have to make smart decisions. So this business, it has everything that gets me excited.
Yeah.
And so I worked there, and then kind of applied to Michigan State. Got a turf grass degree from Michigan State, and was fortunate enough to do an internship at Myopia Hunt Club here in Massachusetts.
Okay. That's how you got out
and
to
worked for Dave Arroyan, who has since passed. And fell in love. I mean, that was my first exposure to the private end. That before then it was just mom and pop public golf course, which was phenomenal. But Dave really exposed me to what the top tier of golf means and what the expectations and standards are. Went back to school, finished that up, and then started working for Mr. Jennings at Chicago Golf Club right out of school. So I started this lineage of these. Yeah, started these lineage of these old world clubs that I just love and continue to love. You won't see me on a modern golf course. I'll play golf on a modern golf course. You'll never see me maintain turf on a modern golf course. So went from Chicago Golf Club. I was there, and Dave at Myopia had his first assistant job open up. I jumped. He offered me the job. I jumped at the chance. I pulled the moved from Chicago to just north of Boston. It pulled the U-Haul trailer in my Pontiac Grand Am following a nor'easter. So lovely. That's how I made my way to Massachusetts. Spent 4 great years as an assistant in Myopia and Essex's Myopia sister club. So they gave me a courtesy interview because we were the sister club, and I got the interview. I walked out of there. I obviously did well at the interview and walked out of there the front runner. And so I took the job there at Essex when I was 28 years old, and I've been there for almost 16 years now. So it's been, I've been fortunate to be at the right places at the right time.
Yeah. Kevin Hicks has been doing some of the very best podcasts on the EarthWorks team, and he's got that phenomenal radio voice that I'm jealous over, and he's Also got 25 years of golf course superintendent experience. So when he talks to superintendents, you can really hear the camaraderie. I pulled a couple clips of Kevin's podcast from this year. One of Curtis Wilford, who talks a lot about woodworking. And I think many of you know Kevin has a great passion for woodworking. So these two get together and they talk a little bit about the woodworking projects that they are working on. It's fascinating and interesting. He also had a chance to interview our first golf course architect, David Drzycki. And he talks with David about how the working together of an architect and the superintendent is really very important, which is interesting. And another clip that I'll share with you here, encourage you to listen to the entire interview. He also had a chance to interview Dave Wilbur again with Justin Woodland, and they talk about Dave's experience currently as a bus driver and how he's helping so many kids in his community. And it's a fascinating conversation, again, one to truly listen to. Kevin had a chance to pull together a whole bunch of fun stories from superintendents from all across the country, and he did what he calls his Follies podcast, which is quite entertaining. And again, please listen to it. But I also added a little clip in here. At the end of many of his interviews, Kevin likes to do what he calls the lightning round, which is a couple questions of the superintendent or his guest, asking him about things that are important to them. And I threw a lightning round in there just to have some fun with it. So enjoy listening to Kevin Hicks on the EarthWorks podcast.
Yeah.
So started doing this. I've made all my wood furniture inside the house, and I just started to kind of figure something. Why not make cutting boards?
Right.
It's something easy to do, and I always see these artisan cutting boards for sale for all over the place, and I could do that. That's easy. So started doing it. Got some exposure on Twitter for the most part, and then kind of did some Instagram and Facebook. I didn't really, have a business per se.
Right.
Although it morphed into going that route with getting a business license and doing all that fun stuff.
Pretty quickly.
Yeah. I mean,
pretty unexpectedly.
It kind of blew up real quick where I was really scrambling to try to figure out, okay, how am I going to produce an order of 60 boards?
Right.
With a deadline. I'm in the middle of summer. I'm supposed to go on a trip with my family for a vacation. I got to get done before this date. How am I going to do this? So it kind of, once again, it brought me back to time management.
Yeah.
Thinking outside the box, or how could I do bulk things and then cut things down to the size that they were supposed to be.
And how do you delegate the sanding to your son now, just like it was delegated to you? Right?
Yeah. That hasn't gone over too well yet.
And then one of the positives with especially your tree management program has been, you're turning out a lot of slabs that you're then turning into accessories for the golf course. And I think that's such a cool, not only a give back, but kind of an olive branch for the folks that don't necessarily want to see the trees going down. But what a great story.
The resource management component of that has been really cool to see. We've had to cut down quite a few trees that were either diseased or just trees damaging infrastructure. That, those trees that if they were good enough shape that, we cut them, harvested them, and slabbed them up. And, this last winter, we turned them all on the benches on the golf course.
Right.
We're saving, I've got some really big slabs of oak that we're going to end up making some king's table for the restaurant.
Nice.
Which are pretty cool.
Beautiful. I've seen some of them, just beautiful slabs.
Yeah. It's working with big slabs it's a challenge.
Yeah.
It takes a whole different skill set than making a cutting board.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think I definitely think it's a nice thing for the club to see that those things are being repurposed. And a lot of species selection out there was not the greatest, and so just cleaning some of that up had to have cleaned up the corridors quite a bit. I can't wait
Yeah,
to see it again.
I've there's been a bunch of members that have come back because of the cost of redwood in California is so off the charts. So
Mhm.
they come and say, "Hey, I know you guys have cut a bunch of redwoods out. Could you save some? And can I buy some slab stuff from you from the golf course?" Yeah, sure. And it doesn't really cost as much employee or hour wise to have a guy slab up a 8-foot redwood tree
Sure.
and then sticker it off to the side of the yard, let it dry, and tell the member he can come pick it up whenever he wants.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty cheap source of revenue.
The GMs had to create a new line item, right? Miscellaneous lumber sales or something like that.
Well, that's a little. I don't know if I want to get into the lumber business, but
I know.
that's a little bit too much of a conflict of interest.
Yeah, I know some of the clubs back east where there's a lot of hardwood on the property, and they've done a significant tree management program. They've funded a lot of the projects through the sale of the timber.
True. I made some phone calls to some of the lumber companies around in California, and I've inquired about that. Especially like on the redwoods,
Right.
They won't touch them.
No.
I mean, the reason being is because they've got too much sapwood.
Right.
Since these trees have had so much water,
Irrigation, right?
They develop too much sapwood and not enough heartwood.
Yep.
Where it's not worth it to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I found that with pine up here that it just grows too quickly with that much irrigation.
Yeah, we've got some really big, redwood trees that are just massive.
Right.
I mean, I've had to use a 50+ inch bar to get through a couple of these, which is a whole new experience in itself.
Yeah, if any of you are listening and want to see some of the stuff he's got, you're at Wolford Woodworking on Instagram, right? And then Curtis Wolford too, right?
Yeah, and then Twitter. I do a lot of stuff on Twitter.
Yeah,
I mean, the golf community on Twitter is so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I learned so many little tricks or what other guys are doing on Twitter that it's such a cool resource.
Well, you were one of the inspirations for me starting that Woodwork as a Turf Twitter page, just because there was such a little subculture of turf heads that were doing woodworking on the side. And I thought, there's probably a need for this, and it's been a great line of communication for all of us that are hobbyists.
There's some really talented guys that are doing some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
I take some inspiration from some of the stuff that they're doing.
Jeez, that guy, Murray Guitars, holy moly, is he talented. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's fun. It's been interesting.
It's even fun that I've gotten a lot of messages from guys that say, "Hey, I really like what you're doing. I'm starting to do some of that kind of stuff now too," which it's cool to inspire some other guys doing stuff.
No question. So we're out of time. What before we log off, what you got any words of wisdom or anything that you want to add to the conversation?
I'd probably say if any superintendents out there, put yourself in challenging situations. You're going to learn a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's invaluable for you as your career, because it's the things that you learn by putting yourself out there will help you in the future.
Yeah. Armin Suni was one of my mentors, and he was on a consulting visit one time in Arizona at my club, and things were not fun at the time politically. And he said, "Hey, you spending some time in the pro shop?" And I said, "Boy, not as much as I probably should." And his advice, and it goes to your time as a GM, interim GM, and all that. He said, you got to get your butt up there, because they can't shoot you in the back if you're facing them. And in our business, boy, one of the best pieces of advice I've ever had. And it holds true no matter what business you're in. So
be invisible is huge. You can't go around hiding your office anymore.
That's exactly right.
Kevin also had a chance to interview our first architect, David Drzezinski, and they had a chance to talk about what an architect goes through when building a design and how he works with the superintendent. So please take a listen to this clip.
Well, the original design, the way I had probably 70%, 75% shortcut to 25% rough. And it's usually a 50-50 kind of deal. And so now he's got to go back and make sure he can get the equipment. So what I can quantify now in the design phase then is the beginning of going to the superintendent, say, look, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think? Let's do the math, right, at this point.
Right.
So, it's a pretty important phase for numbers and quantities and getting things accurate. And then in the field, it allows me just to know how much I have to play with. How much green can we build? We got 120,000 square feet or 110,000 square feet. That's a huge difference in price, right?
Darn right. Yeah.
So that's how we go about really creating plans these days to create quantities, to make sure that when we're in the field doing our thing, we don't step over a number that we can't come back from.
So have your design objectives or goals, have they changed, being primarily focused on Western golf? You and I have had some great conversations about water and kind of where we're going or not going, depending on how you look at it. Have they evolved to I'm sure they've evolved to account for some of the changes that we're going to be facing, but is that a tough sell for the clientele?
It can be, right, especially when we're going into places where they're used to grass everywhere, and whether it's the members or the golfers that are worried about suddenly everything shrinking in their mind. But coming out of the Phoenix market, Phoenix, as you know, was pretty ahead of the curve in many areas. I think that the rest of the country is now doing.
I agree.
Really in irrigation, and the stuff we were doing in irrigation 30 years ago, Kevin, was what folks now in the Carolinas and elsewhere are just finally sort of getting to.
Right.
60-foot spacing on heads and big pipe size to distribute water fast. Just more specific in justifying it. There in Phoenix, it was just that's all the water we had. Sorry, you had to do it, so we were forced to get creative and think out of the box there. And of course scaling back on maintaining turf, right? I mean, that was those two components were the big thing that dictated the golf courses in that market. And then I brought that into Vegas before that was necessary. And now we're seeing that in Vegas is becoming what they're ever going to have to do there, scale back.
Probably more so than Phoenix, right?
Yeah, they've always been, they kind of denied it for a while, right? Because that's just typical Vegas, big splashy, everything's big and bold. Well, it's to the point now where there's no water. So at least available to them. So they're going to have to go back and reinvent the wheel there. And so my course there, we were already down 75, 80 acres of turf, and we're in a little bit better position to deal with some of that than maybe some of those that you've seen there that are wall-to-wall grass everywhere, just because that's what they wanted at the time. So reality sets in, right? That these are the things you got to do. So I think I've always been, maybe I've always been a little bit more responsible to that cost thing, with a lot of properties. I think we have to be very careful with what we design to make sure that it's sustainable. And maybe there's a period of time there where we all felt maybe we didn't need to be, but guess what? That was then. This is now, and there's a big difference, right now with that stuff.
Water sources are changing. Do you place any consideration on the type of water that golf courses are going to have access to? In other words, are they going to be an effluent use golf course? Are they going to be a surface water in your design specifically?
Not as much. I mean, I think, like I said, it's a team effort usually. Right. And I'll look to the superintendent, or if there's someone like you or a consultant of some sort agronomically involved, I need to pose that question to them. Right? I think you always have to ask those questions and make sure that, okay, what's out of the box here that we have to weigh in that might affect everybody down the road. And water does come up. Usually the irrigation side of it has to deal with it more so than I do. Sure. We were doing the affluent thing, again, forever down in Phoenix. So I think it was just an assumed thing that we dealt with, and it was the water we had, right? And absolutely that the industry has tried to figure out what grass types have been best for that, which then does affect, what I can do as far as that third dimension game portion, ground game portion of my stuff. So absolutely, there's some things that weigh in there. I think soils, I've always been a soils guy. I think that's always something that's intrigued me as far as what we can and can't do with some design traits based on what kind of soil we have with drainage and such. But all those things weigh in and just kind of it kind of chisel away at everything that I want to do. A little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Right.
You kind of go, okay, now I know what
What
I
am
can
I
do.
left with?
Yeah, exactly. I got a bowling lane, or I got
Yeah. That's funny.
One of Kevin's favorite things is the lightning round. At the end of a lot of his interviews, he asks his guests to do a little lightning round. What's your favorite this or that? This one happens to be with Brian Bowl. Again, it's quite entertaining, as most of Kevin's podcast work is.
Okay, so I try to wrap up with the lightning round, and the rules are you can't think about it. It's just whatever pops into your head first. And
All right.
Okay, so the first question is beer, wine, or whiskey?
Beer.
Okay. Blades or cavity backs?
Cavity backs.
What's your
Need some
handicap?
forgiveness there.
Okay, what's your handicap?
High handicapper.
High handicapper. All right. Okay, so this could be interesting for you. College or pro sports?
College. Definitely. Yeah. I
Hands down. Which ones?
rarely will watch much for professional sports.
Which ones?
FCS football is big,
Okay.
obviously with my passion for NDSU football.
Yep. Okay. What is, when you leave the shop, what has to be in your cart?
The dog.
Perfect.
Yep. Our director of wildlife management, Sonny.
I like that. Sonny's a great dog. Best innovation in the industry in your time? I love these answers because they're always
Right.
different.
Right. I can't be happier with the Toro Geolink sprayers. Such a turnabout. I was the biggest naysayer with GPS technology because I was always concerned about what happens when things go wrong and being able to repair that. But
Right.
man, are they fantastic units, and we find more and more uses for them and different opportunities to implement our agronomic programs.
Right.
Site specific. It's just been eye-opening.
Yeah, we talked about, I forgot about that conversation we had, but how that had really changed your mind on that technology. And I would tend to agree. I think that that's one of the ones that, the more forward thinking superintendents always key in on. Once you get to see the value, it's
right.
It's indisputable. I mean, there's no way around it. That's a great answer. Last one. What do you enjoy off the clock?
Let's see. Probably coaching.
Okay.
And also woodworking. Enjoy that.
Yeah.
I haven't had much chance with that recently with the 14-year-old and 9-year-old, but hoping to kind of get back to that.
Yeah, you won't for the next
more
couple of
time
years.
accommodates.
And then we also have our spirited boy, Jack Higgins, the agronomist from the East Coast. Jack does a lot of podcasts, and in fact, this podcast started because of Jack's suggestion that in the midst of COVID and wondering what we're going to do, Jack came to us and said, hey, why don't we do a podcast? And when we all said, okay, that's a great idea. What's a podcast? Jack kind of filled in and jumped on the podcast process, and he's been doing some great podcasts. He's such a spirit, and he's got such a unique approach to interviewing, and he's been doing a lot of live interviews. So he's actually taking his recording equipment out, and we recorded a couple both live here. I cut a couple clips from some of his live interviews. He interviewed Billy Bagwell recently, who was the president of the Carolinas Association, and just a great conversation in his office. He also interviewed our dear friend Jared Minnick, who runs the Maryland Soccer Complex and is a big voice in protecting grass in soccer complexes and sports fields. A wonderful interview, and we really appreciate Jared's support and work, and we'll have Jared back again, I'm sure, very soonly. So here's a couple clips from the Jack Higgins collection of the EarthWorks podcast.
Let's continue in the conversation into greens. That was the number one thing I felt walking out there was, oh my God, you stepped on the green, and it was, you had wonderful stand density. I mean, those greens were dense. However, they were as firm as could be.
Yep. Yeah, we can we're going to do our best to keep them that way for as long as we can.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kudos to my team for their effort. But I think we went into it with a good plan, and we executed the plan, and it's working. And we're happy where we are. As always, there's always things you can nitpick and things that we can continue to get better at. But the overall, taking a 50-acre golf course, 9-hole golf course, and taking it completely to the dirt, wall to wall, OB to OB, and putting it all back together while also maintaining 18 holes being open is pretty remarkable. And that's where I'm fortunate to have the team that I have that's helped us to get to this point.
Yeah. I mean, I want to still talk greenkeeping, but let's also throw in the other monkey wrench that happened this year on top of all this. Like you're saying, you're maintaining 18 holes for play. You're growing in 50 acres of brand new. And in what month was it? April?
February.
Earlier. Yeah. You had a shop fire.
Yeah. So I got elected president in November of 21. And that was all going great. And then we're excited. April 1st, dozers are showing up, and we're starting this project we've been working on for the last 10 years, really. With the master planning and everything. And then we lose 90% of the equipment fleet in a shop fire at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night or whatever it was.
Normal night in February.
Yeah.
And so when did you become aware of it? When you got to work that morning? Or?
No, I got a phone call from security at, I want to say it was 9 p.m. I think. And hey, there's a fire at the shop. 911 has already been called. The fire department's on the way. Okay, great. I'm coming. And in my head, I'm not thinking total loss. I'm just thinking that
there's a fire.
Right. And then I arrived to the entire building's gone, along with every piece of equipment in it.
Oh my gosh. Now, it wasn't where we're sitting here today. This is the office.
No, thankfully the fire department got here in time to protect the office.
Yeah, because this would have gone. It's close enough.
Yeah, it's under the same roof line, and it was coming this way. And they got here and were able to get hoses on this corner here behind us and protected the office and break room area, as well as my mechanic shop is a standalone building across the courtyard from where the equipment was parked. That was where the fire was, and they got hoses on that area too to protect that. So, if you're gonna have a fire, never fun and by any means, but protecting and saving the place that we call home.
That's right.
Having where the crew can go every day and enjoy lunch and have an office and all of those things is important. And more so than equipment, I think, as far as crew morale and whatever. So
you nailed it.
So that was a blessing. And then obviously my equipment manager's shop is you can have all the equipment in the world, but without anything to maintain it, you're up the creek without a paddle. So
because both of these buildings are home, this is the crew's home while they're at work, and that's your equipment manager's home.
Exactly.
That's his office.
Yeah. So it was devastating, no doubt about it. But the
timing could not have been worse.
Yeah, and then so you're, looking back on it, it's definitely not something that you would ever wish. But I almost think that because we're only having to maintain 18 holes in a day-to-day practice, having less equipment because of what we were able to get from neighbors and loaner equipment and whatever, it actually made it somewhat easier to do because we didn't, instead of needing 3 triplexes to mow tees, we could get away with 1, maybe 2, because we only had 18 holes to mow versus 27.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And then also because of just our club in general, when we're 27 holes, we do a lot of shotguns for men's day and ladies' day. So we'd have to have 27 holes of golf ready by 9:30 in the morning, and being 18 holes, we were just tee times. So
wow, great.
Not needing all of the equipment that we had was somewhat of a blessing in disguise to have the renovation going on, but at the same time we had no equipment to do anything. So,
yeah. Oh yeah. So yeah. Well, it is a blessing. Like you're right. You had 9 extra holes that you didn't have to maintain.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, because there was an outside construction company that was in here as well,
yes.
I imagine.
Yeah, so TDI was our contractor, and they came in, and obviously they had all the equipment to do the renovation work, but we didn't have I mean, we didn't have a weed eater, much less a fairway mower.
Oh, that's insane. And you mentioned, and I remember there was a lot of local superintendents and vendors that came.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, back to the brotherhood that we talked
it's a
about.
wonderful thing.
It's Spring Island and Chessie Creek are here, both really close to us, within driving distance with a cart close, and they were big, along with several other golf courses in the area, to allow us to borrow equipment, that some of which I still have. I mean, like, I have a Pro Gator out here that Spring Island has let us have since the fire.
Yeah, wonderful.
And then all the vendors, John Deere, Jacobson, Toro, have all pitched in and helped out, and just a huge outpouring of support, which was awesome.
You guys have a great brotherhood here. Yeah. It's really a nice thing.
Jack also had the opportunity to interview one of our favorite guests, Jared Minnick of the Maryland Soccer Complex. Jared is influential in a lot of ways in the sports turf complex. This is a great little clip, and it was a great podcast.
To be on those.
Well, let's talk about what you have out here, because you mentioned the 3 artificial fields. That'll be we don't need to talk much more about them, but you do have everything else out here too. You've got cool season turf. You've got Bermuda and all different types of Bermuda.
All different types. Yeah.
And you've got projects in the works. And so let's kind of talk about how that gets scheduled and how that gets maintained, because you've got 2 different types of growing plants out here.
It's amazing how one grass is happy, one grass is not happy. But in the spring, it's one day one grass is happy. The next day, I think I referenced to you that this past weekend, Friday, we had 97, so we had a record high. Sunday morning we had 47, we had a record low.
Oh my gosh.
So one day Bermuda was happy as can be. The next day,
stunted.
It's like, what's going on here? And the cool season is we have right now we have 7 full Bermuda grass fields. We have sprigged into 2 more. So we have 2 more that are Bermuda that are essentially overseeded with cool season still. And then we just did a renovation on our stadium 18 days ago that we cut out cool season and we sprigged Bermuda grass. So we're reducing our number of cool season fields. Not that we're unhappy with our cool season fields, but our Bermuda grass, especially these newer varieties, allow us to have more use and spend less money, because we're able to have but I referenced a high level of play. A high level player now, or a high level team, an MLS Next team, will request dormant Bermuda over even a green ryegrass field.
Wow.
Because it plays so well. The footing is brilliant.
So let's talk more Bermuda. I mean, you said you kind of went over it fast. You've got this stadium field that you're growing in, and now we know why the temperature swings are
important.
Pretty important. You saw that last weekend. You're trying to grow in Bermuda grass. You got sprigs out there. You got a 97-degree day. You're doing backflips.
We were just living it. And then the next day we were like, okay, this isn't. Yeah, because we only have a 28-day grow-in.
Wow.
Granted, that's...
You challenge yourself over here.
Yeah, the 35-day from seed grow-in we did 10 years ago wasn't enough fun, so we decided to do it.
Let's shorten that window.
Yeah, shorten that window. But, I mean, Bermuda grows, and I've caught some flack from a few people that or there's been a few doubters that have come out, but they obviously, especially on social media, they obviously don't know who I am. They don't know what we do here. That we challenge the status quo, and that's what our board of directors has. When I was here before, and when I was here helping as a consultant, and now I'm back here again, that's what the board of directors wants for us. We are a nonprofit. We don't just go out and spend money willy-nilly to sod the stadium would have been easier. But it would have cost 3 times as more. The product wouldn't have been as good because we have a fiber sand field, so we have polypropylene fibers in our sand. A sod layer over the top of that's not going to be conducive.
No, it voids your propylene.
So it's like we did what's best for the field. We did what's best for our budget. Is it challenging to grow it in? Yeah. Are we going to be successful? we may not be 110% perfect, but what's Bermuda grass do in the summer? Even today, when it was 83, it's still growing.
Oh yeah, it's certainly growing. We walked it. There's an enormous, I mean, you couldn't come across a square inch that didn't have green tissue in it.
And we did sprig at 2,000 bushels an acre, which is
that's heavy.
A lot of sprigs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's essentially it's over a 2.5x rate.
Okay.
But if we're going to fill in fields, then that's a 2.5 time X rate compared to traditional thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Many jobs that we've done from an advisory standpoint, or fields we've sprigged here at Soccerplex before, we've done that because we've never had, or we typically don't have more than 5 weeks for anything. That's why we had grew in the stadium in 35 days from seed, because we had to use the field. And that was in 2010, that was 2012. We're a nonprofit. We need to use our fields.
It's what you have to do. And there's expectations of the whole soccer community around the country to come out to this, because you have 30 fields total?
There's 24 in the park. We maintain 22.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah.
We'd like to fit 6 more. Yeah.
There you
I
go.
Like where your head's at.
Yeah.
That would be very helpful. That would be very helpful.
So let's see. Your first event in the stadium is when?
July 3rd.
July 3rd. Okay.
So that's 29 days from the day we sprigged.
Now, so you're looking at a little over 2 weeks here.
Yep.
And what are you gonna do for between now and then? You had some thoughts.
Well, because it's been cool, I can either complain about it being cool and use that as an excuse, or we can put the covers on and we can put the lights that we have over the top of the covers, and we can generate some heat and some growth. That's what we're going to do. We're not going to complain about it. We're going to get it done.
You already have the pre-plant in the ground. Everything it needs is there.
Yeah, we were able to, once we stripped the field off and then it got laser graded, we were able to work in profile down the middle of the field, the center 30,000 feet. We worked in Ecolite. We worked in Renovate Plus. We worked in 333.
Yeah.
So we put the base in. Once the grass was down and it got rolled and watered, we came back with more profile on top, with more Renovate Plus on top. Center 30,000 feet. I mean, I'm talking about all these matches. Our fields don't wear. None of these fields wear except in the center of 30,000 feet, where the mass of the use is. 75% of the use is on 30% of the field. So we treat that area differently. Even in our pre-plants, even in our, in what we've done to reduce our compaction potential.
Everything you do in your agronomic program is about isolating down to those wear areas of the field. Yeah.
Completely different. Yep. That 30,000 feet gets maintained completely differently than the other 60,000. And it's not even close to being similar. They are different fields.
And last but never least, we finally got our friend Chad Kuzawa to get on the podcast network, and he's going to be recording one very soon. As a matter of fact, I believe next week he will be recording another, or at least airing another podcast. But he did interview Ross Miller of the Country Club of Detroit, a great interview, and Ross is such a great supporter of ours, and we really are very excited that he was able to get on with Chad, and it was a great interview. So last but not least, here's a little clip of the interview that Chad Kuzawa had with Ross Miller of the Country Club of Detroit.
We're doing the traditional 12 on 2 off, and I was just growing frustrated, and it was creating a lot more challenges for our assistants to accomplish daily goals and really push our conditioning initiatives. So when COVID hit, we just said, basically, the hell with this. We're ripping the Band-Aid off. We're getting after it. We're going to do this. It's going to be hard. But we have to layer this out, because a lot of it was employee safety driven.
Sure.
Those first several months in COVID, and still to this day, we're going to continue learning. It's a virus. It evolves. But the fear of the unknown. A lot of things were unknown for us. So employee safety was paramount. So we layered in that type of schedule, and then did it again last year. And we've seen a dramatic reduction in absenteeism, dramatic reduction in tardiness, as well as a dramatic reduction in overtime. So obviously generational differences, we're not seeing as many individuals that want to work 60, 70 hours a week. That's okay.
Sure.
So we overcome that with just brute horsepower. So we go through that and continue to push and do that. So now our crew sizes continue to grow and layer in things like that. So that's how we've done the scheduling, and we're going to continue on that train. It has been a very, very good success for us, and we're going to continue with that.
So have you, so turnover is always, going to be that elephant in the room. Have you seen a reduction in that, or were you not really having to battle that too badly before COVID anyway? Do you have a longer tenured crew that just had to adjust, or is it kind of gradually become new players in the game as well?
It's a continued evolution for us. The amount of new hires coming in, I would say, is reducing. Sure. From what we used to see previously. Just one, I think it comes down to quality of life. Is we and a lot of it, I think the schedule helps, but I think at least, and again, this is just our situation, what has worked for us, what we believe in, what meshes with operational goals, standards of operation, and what we look at as a club. We are a Platinum Club of America, so our conditions have to match that and exceed that. But how do we looked at it as a challenge? How do we match those or exceed those on a daily basis, but also work to live and not live to work?
Well,
which was it was more or less a challenge thrown down from our board president and Greens chair when I first started. Is they said, look, we want you to be here. We want you to see your kids grow up. We want you to do this. So dig in and get after it, figure it out.
Sure.
So in that, we've taken that as a core. So we look at, okay, when we hire team members, we look at more psychological questioning, sociological questioning, that, look, we want them, I really don't care if they have experience in this. It really doesn't bother me. But what we want is someone that thinks of we before me. Most important person in the room is the person standing next to him. That's priority one for us. If that's not the case, I am sorry, you're not going to be a fit with us. But that's what we look for, and we build off of that. And we look at it as an upside down triangle here. Like, I'm here, my role is to support the assistants in managing, leading operational goals on a daily basis, and any needs or anything that the staff sees. Like, hey, if we have X piece of tools or equipment, we're going to be able to be more efficient here. Assistants talk about it, bring it to me, we discuss it. Okay, let's figure it out. So that's been a big, the culture, I think, drives everything personally for our operation, and it works. Yeah. It works for us. Now we continue to evolve it. We're layering in more and more 20-hour, 25-hour a week employees that just want to work mornings. 6 to 11, fine. 6 to 11, grab lunch here at the club. Great. Beyond appreciated. They're into work on time. They take care of their equipment and they move on. They're out for the afternoons when the course is full. So that works for us. Yes. We're able to have more brute manpower in the mornings to really accomplish things.
Sure.
And I do want to say thank you for everybody who has supported us for this past year, and I look forward to seeing everybody next year. We will be at the GIS conference down in Orlando with a new booth, with some of the video clips from these podcasts, and a whole team from EarthWorks. And hopefully, if you do come down, you'll stop by and visit with us. And we will have a bar on the floor on Wednesday afternoon. So please join us for that. But I want to say thank you for everybody who has supported us and who has been here on the EarthWorks podcast. And again, we're always looking for new people to interview. So if you have any ideas or if you want to be on the podcast, please let us know. And thank you once again.